What's up, buddy? How you been? How you doing? Got something I'm going to talk to you about today. And the topic is video game censorship. And it's something I don't like. I don't like censorship. Especially of the arts. And I especially don't like this kind of retroactive censorship where people go back in time, they take an artistic work, and they change it to from its original intention. Not always with the approval of the director, sometimes with. We saw this in films with George Lucas went back for the special editions. Now, that I'm actually okay with. I don't love a lot of the changes he made, but I'm okay with them because I know why he made the changes. It was his personal decision as a director, and I ultimately have to say, well, they're his movies. It's what he's allowed to decide. But when I see some of these changes that are happening, especially now with video games, I don't think it's that anyone, the director or the writer or anything, was involved with these creations. I think that these were decisions that were made to try and appease, I don't know, they're worried about backlash to certain elements that they think aren't going to fit in with the modern way of thinking about things, about being a good person. I'm very distracted, by the way, of this awesome Final Fantasy video. I decided I wanted to put some on the screen while I was talking about Final Fantasy, and I realized I'm like, it's hard to not watch this awesome sword battle. This is from the PSP game, by the way. Anyway, but it is Final Fantasy that we're talking about here today. Is a game that we're actually talking about Final Fantasy VI. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of Final Fantasy VI, one of the greatest RPGs of all time. And very influential, incredibly influential. This is arguably, if you believe that video games are art, I mean, this is one of the top pieces of art that has ever been created. It's had a huge impact on future RPGs, on the RPG genre, on storytelling, on artistic, the Amano art, this classic Yoshituku Ano, I don't remember his name, but the point is all of this has been hugely influential in video games. So I don't like them going in and changing things. Now, this is not necessarily about this idea of the pixel remaster. Because what we have here, or what they have promised us, is that they're going to remaster the game. Now, I'm okay with a remaster. Honestly, this looks fine. They're making certain quality of life changes that are hopefully going to make the game easier to play on modern devices, maybe look a little better, a little bit sharper. Fine. I don't have a huge problem with that. They've obviously made some mistakes with this, as we can see. I don't know why you would make a game that's a pixel remaster, but the font is clearly not a pixel font. You could have found a font that works. There's a couple other changes they've made that I know people have problems with, but these are all things I think they could maybe patch or update. Regardless, it kind of looks like they did an okay job in trying to update this game for audiences without making major creative changes. But then somebody brought something to my attention. And you could say this is slight, and this is not, oh, it's not a big deal, Vito, you know, it's just a little thing. Well, I'm going to argue that making any sort of little change like this, it has ramifications in terms of, these are historical pieces of artwork. Okay? All these people out here, they say, yeah, video games are art. Of course, video games are art. Well, if they're art, then you don't change art. You don't take the Mona Lisa and go, well, you know, it's the modern age, so she should be a black woman or she should be trans. No, it represents a certain period in time. And whatever was going on at that period in time is forever immortalized in the artwork. And I don't like the idea of changing it to meet new changing norms. I'll say this. Yes, I agree with directors changing their movies depending on the intentions. But for instance, Steven Spielberg famously changed E.T. to make it so all the agents chasing after E.T., instead of having guns, they had walkie-talkies because he thought the guns were too scary. He changed a reference to Elliot. His mom says, you look like a terrorist. He changed that because he thought it was too politically charged. Again, I feel like that is not updating the movie to be more in line with your vision. I feel like that's updating the movie to reflect changing norms, which, I don't know. It's a complicated subject, but I think it ultimately hurts the piece overall. I made a video one time. Let me see if I can find it. Vito, censorship in China. No. Street Fighter. I made a video where basically... oh my god, why do I look so terrible in this video? I made a video... Terrible lighting. Where originally, in Street Fighter 2, you had the flag of Hong Kong, because Fei Long, the fighter, is supposed to be from Hong Kong, and they have changed the flag now to be a Chinese flag rather than the Hong Kong flag, because this is not, again, it's not a creative choice to say, well, we want to update the art based on the director's intentions and vision. It's to say we don't want to piss off China by showing them a Hong Kong flag. It feels wrong. It feels like, why do we treat video games this way? If you did things like this with movies, most of the time people are outraged. If you took, historical movies that people love, and they are outraged. People have been outraged about the E.T. changes. They were outraged about the Star Wars changes. Lots of other changes have been made to movies, and people go, no, you can't take these important pieces of art and fundamentally change pieces of them. Okay, so we're talking about Final Fantasy VI. And again, you can say I'm nitpicking, but I don't. What is the purpose of this change? Now, there is a point in the game Final Fantasy VI where the main character, named Terra, and I think they kept her name for the more recent translations, she kind of blacks out. She was a slave of the Empire. She blacks out in a cave, and she has a series of flashbacks. So let's take a look at that, and we might skip further into it. Love that classic Mode 7. You know you're passing out when the pixels get big, right? Alright, well, here she is. She's remembering what had happened to her. The evil Kefka, who's like a clown wizard jerk-off, puts a slave crown on her to make her into a slave, okay? And this is not a good thing that has happened. We are establishing the villain of the story. We're saying, look, the villain of the story forced her into a slave, forced her to become a killing machine. Look at how evil this man is, right? And we go on to meet the rest of the Empire. This is the evil Empire that has enslaved her. And the Empire has a little speech. We stand on the brink of a major breakthrough. In the days to come, we will witness a total revival of magic. They've twisted magic to their own evil whims in order to use it against the world. And we have all the soldiers down here in the bottom. And all the evil soldiers are in attendance. And let's be clear, this is very reminiscent of a rally, you might say. And just in classic rally form, and I'm not going to do it, and there's a reason I'm not going to do it, but let's pretend I was trying to say hi to my friend, and I stuck my hand up all the way, making a saluting gesture with one hand. Okay, I'm not letting you guys screenshot that. I know you people. Okay, so we're establishing an allegory. The Empire in Final Fantasy VI are Germans of a certain time period. A certain, we can't say their name, we'll get demonetized. But they're supposed to be emblematic of the German army. They're giving a very particular salute associated with a very particular German political party. And through this very obvious, allegorical or whatever you want to call it, gesture, we understand, okay, this is our story's Germans, German soldiers, whatever you want to call it. They are the standard for that. Like in Star Wars, that we use certain aspects of German iconography in Star Wars to establish the Empire is kind of to stand in that conflict, where the very Hugo Boss looking uniforms and the very the black and white aesthetic that they had for their uniforms. Okay, so here's the updated version. This just came out. Again, this came out, I believe, early this year. Oh, February 23rd. So this just came out a week ago. It's even on sale right now, only $14. But, I mean, they tell you, again, if we looked at that trailer, it says this is the ultimate remaster. This is the ultimate chance to experience this game. They don't tell you, also, we have changed things because we thought they were too politically charged. Here we are in the remaster. And again, quality of life changes, okay? On the Super Nintendo, had a limited color palette, so the flashback had to be this ugly yellow color. We've moved over. We have access to the full RGB spectrum, and the flashback can be a much more pleasing sepia tone. That's an example of a change that I think is totally reasonable. Okay, that's looking back at the limitations of the time period. That's a lot of what the Star Wars changes were. He goes, back then we couldn't put 100 X-Wings in a scene. We didn't have CG. Now I want for the Death Star run to be a little more impressive, for the lasers to be a little more, insane. And I go, okay, yeah, that's a perfectly reasonable change. This, I think, goes too far. As we go again, we see she was a slave. Here's the Empire. And how do they talk to each other? Also, where are the soldiers going to be in frame? Yeah, they're down there now. Okay. And maybe they've made it a little bit wider. They've zoomed in a little more clearly. And here's what they're doing. Hey, what is this bonsai? Bonsai! I'm going to art now. Again, This you can say, Vito. This is silly. This is nitpicking. What do you care? I think you've lost out on what the original was trying to convey. And maybe it was a very stupid hit you over the head allegory to say, see, they're giving these salutes, these one-handed salutes. Remember who did that? Okay, maybe it was heavy-handed at the time. But that's what it was. That's what it was. That was what was emblematic of that time period. When people, a lot of creative works, when establishing your bad guys, would connect them to previous fictional or previous regimes that were not fictional, and do so with these very, broad gestures of, maybe giving them red armbands, giving them certain salutes. Okay. This is using popular iconography to form an emotional connection between the real world and the fictional world. This means nothing. This is, hey. And I don't, who made this change is the question that I have. Was this a change made in Japan? Did Japan say, we think this imagery is too hurtful? I mean, this is an absurd change, let's be clear. I have never once heard anyone comment, hey, do you remember that scene 20 minutes into Final Fantasy VI where everybody gives a certain political salute? Weren't you wildly offended by that? No. Who was ever offended by this? This seems like a choice. Okay, this is a hypothesis. I don't have proof. But it seems like a lot of the time here in the West, Western people will go in, and they have certain people on their staff. Sometimes they call them sensitivity readers, diversity chiefs and officers, whatever else. And they think way too much about these things, and they go, whoa. We can't possibly have them giving this classic one-armed salute like in the original game. That's going to, somebody might get triggered. We don't have a trigger warning in the game, and they're going to see that, and it's going to recall all the horror. I don't know. I think it was somebody in the West went to Japan and said, change this because we are too sensitive to possibly deal with it. And it's sad. It's sad. It feels like we treat video, again, because if you made a movie, and there are movies, again, where fictional regimes resemble a certain German political party. A good example is Starship Troopers. Again, what do you call it? Or Star Wars. These things, yes, they resemble these German opponents of ours during World War II. We don't go in and say, "Oh, you got to get rid of that. We have to change their outfits and the way they walk around and everything." It's too reminiscent of that horrible war. No, that was the point. The point was to draw a direct connection between that regime and this evil regime, to say these are the bad guys. And we're still doing it. Even the First Order now, there are certain scenes that are purposefully meant to evoke certain imagery from that time period of the rallies and the gesturing and the saluting. Okay. So I really want to know who it was who said, wait, it's too offensive. Because I don't know. I don't know what I can say. Some are going to say, this is not a big deal, Vito. And I hate to make the slippery slope argument, but it isn't even the slippery slope. I object to this regardless of what else it might lead to. I object to taking what should be an important historical piece of video game fiction, okay, one of our greatest works in the RPG genre, of the JRPG genre, a famous game that everyone knows, and changing it for the sake of modern political tastes. I find that abhorrent. But there is a slippery slope component of how far does it go? Will it stop at changing the salute? Okay, does it change? Do we need to change the costumes? Are we going to go back into the 3D models and delete things from them because they're too offensive now? I don't like this. And I'm seeing it more and more with video games. They deleted lines from the new Resident Evil 4 for VR because they thought Leon was too sexist. Again, with the Street Fighter changes, they don't want to offend China by admitting that Hong Kong exists and is its own nation. People are not taking video games seriously as an art form. They seem to think that it's something that you can just change at will whenever you want, alter it as much as you want. The core experience doesn't matter. It's just a toy. It's all meaningless. And I fundamentally reject that idea. I think this is wrong. I think Square should be taken, not to task. I'm not going to be mad, but I want them to explain. I want to go, we noticed that you changed this and we want to know why. What was the reason? Give us the reason, and we want to hear why you felt it necessary to change this scene. And I can't think of any justification for it. I think it is a slap in the face to historical accuracy, to viewing video games as a legitimate artistic art form. You can't alter art without, again, some sort of meaningful reason. Okay, yes, updating it for the times with the technology so the colors are nicer and the sprites are sharper. Absolutely. But when you start actually, impacting things that have an impact on the plot and the structure and the story, I don't like it. And I don't know if you like it either. So why don't you let me know in the comments? Is this okay? Am I overreacting? Should I just go, they changed it, it's fine? You don't want to offend people. We can't offend people. Don't like those Germans from a certain time period. So why even put anything in there that might remind them of that? To which again I would argue, well, that's what Star Wars is. There's so many fictional things that have these fictional evil groups. How much of history do you want to alter to avoid potentially offending some imaginary person? I've never met anyone who was offended by any of this. I find it all. I was gonna say ridiculous, but no, that sounds like I'm laughing at it. Seriously, as somebody who cares about art, I find this disturbing and sad. But let me know, am I being overreacting? Am I being stupid? Tell me in the comments. We got more cool videos coming soon. Peace and love in 2022. And take care of yourself, everybody. I love you.